Never possessed a tie. Good evening, everyone. Welcome, welcome. Just as people join the webinar, I'm going to tell you a little bit about what's happening at the Academy of Cheese. We are absolutely over the moon, thrilled to bits that last week we awarded our first level 3 fellow certification, and now that's been followed up by another 8 people have passed all of the modules at level 3. So they've done their 4 core modules and their 4 supplementary modules. And this is a real milestone for the Academy of Cheese. So we're very, very happy. Thank you to everybody who's taken part in the review panels and contributing material and their expertise to creating the modules. The people that have passed the level 3 certification have had to have passed level 1 and level 2 too. So our first fellow was Hero Hirsch, who was at 15 years at Paxton and Whitfield. So Jazz, who's with us this evening, knows Hero very well. We all know Hero very well. She's a bit of a legend in the industry. So we're thrilled to bits for her. Congratulations, Hero. She's recently moved on from Paxton Whitfields and now works for Pick and Cheese, part of the Cheese Bar Group. So very excited about that. So it's a beautiful sunny evening. Thank you for joining us for this first of our Affineur of the Year webinars. We are fully loaded with 2 amazing, well, more than 2 cheesemakers, but 2 cheesemakers whose cheeses are being affineured and 2 cheesemakers who are competing as well tonight. So that's quite exciting. Please do put where you're joining us from in the chat. And if you want to put any questions in the chat as well, I'll be monitoring that. And we do have the question and answer block where you can put the questions in as well. But I'm sure anybody that's joined our webinars before know the format. I'm just going to introduce you to, we have a number of sponsors for Affineur of the Year. And I'm going to introduce you to Yona and Sharon. Where are we, Sharon? Let me get you in. If you both can unmute, please. Spotlight. Hi, ladies.
Hi.
Lovely to see you. Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you so much for joining us for our first webinar, Affineur of the Year webinar. And thank you so much for sponsoring this amazing experiment. Tell us a little bit about Peter's Yard and why you've sponsored. You know, what brings you to our cheese world?
Yes. No, thank you. We're delighted to be here. This is the 2nd year in a row that we sponsor the Affineur of the Year awards, and Peter's Yard makes we're a sourdough bakery brand, and of course we make sourdough crackers that are perfectly crafted to pair with cheese. So this is really the connection of why we're here today. But we're just delighted to see all the creative approaches and affineuring, and really looking forward to the event in July to see what will bring us.
Yeah, 12th of June is the finals, so it's not long. So it
Not
is
long,
really, really exciting, really exciting. Well, thank you for joining. If you want to ask any questions throughout, do let us know. But I'm going to hand over now because we've got the wonderful Perry, who is right. I'm going to take the spotlight from you gorgeous girls. Thank you so much for joining. And Perry is our 2 times winner of Affineur of the Year. Unbelievably amazing.
Yeah, that's a far more hideous pictures than the 2 lovely ladies from Peter's Yard, isn't it? Yeah, but slightly out of breath. I was in the maturing rooms planning to do this, and my connection jumped out, so I've run up to the office. So hopefully it's a bit more stable now.
Thank you for running, and you're very fit because you're not out of breath.
Yes, well, I got up pretty quickly, and I was waiting while you was doing your introduction about everything about Affineur of the Year. So I've won 2 years in a row, which is great. And I'm not competing this year. I'm taking a nice year off to focus on a new Stanford shop which I've opened. So you asked me if I could host this. It's my first hosting gig, so I thought, why not? I'll give it a go and see how we get on.
Well, that's fantastic, and thank you so much for doing that. You and Mark at Rennet Rind are a great supporter of Academy of Cheese and always have been from the very beginning, and thank you for that. So I'm going to hand over to you. I'm going to disappear, and I'll monitor any questions that are in the chat as well, or in the Q&A, and then I can throw those at you when you come. But we've got some fantastic people here this evening, and I'll let you do the intros to them as we go through. Is that okay?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So I'll run through roughly what we're doing. I'm going to speak to two cheesemakers first. We're going to speak to Robin, and then Jonny, and then the competitors. And yeah, it's like a real Q&A kind of session going all the way through, but we're going to dedicate 5 minutes to that at the end. So if you've got loads of questions, just stack them up in the corner, and we'll answer them as much as we can. So let's get stuck in, and let's speak to our first cheesemaker, which is Robin. If you could kindly unmute yourself and begin to talk, that would be amazing. But
Hi,
Robin's
Perry.
Hi, how you doing? You all right?
Yeah, very good.
Good. Yeah, do you want to tell everyone about what you do, Robin, what cheese you make, and the history behind your cheeses?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, so we make Stilton, which is one of the UK's most famous and well-renowned cheeses in the UK and all across the world now. And we're a family-owned and run business, and we've been based in Cropwell, which is a small little village just outside Nottingham in the Vale of Belvoir. We've been making cheese there for well over 100 years, so we're well established, and we're one of only 5 Stilton dairies now. So we are, so we've been making cheese a long time. And we've got 8 farms that supply us with milk. They're all based in the Peak District, funnily enough, and they're about sort of 40 miles from where we are, and that works really well. We very much want grass-fed milk, so it's very important for the quality of our cheese. So with Stilton, we really want milk where the cows are outside eating that lush grass, and we're thankful for a bit of good weather recently because that does helps the grass grow. So that's all good.
Does the sort of the change in the weather in terms of it, being so much rain in the UK and then switching to like blistering sunshine for a week, does that have quite a large impact on what you guys do?
Yeah, well, I mean, all that rain that we've had is very unhelpful because it just makes putting the cows out really quite difficult. So the grass is still, the soil in fact is still really wet underneath the grass. So it may appear quite dry at grass level, but still really wet underneath. So we still need a lot of drying out to happen. But it's very helpful that we get a bit of sun because you probably noticed the grass is absolutely going balmy. It really is growing well. So so that is good. So at this time of year, we tend to come out of the winter with quite high fat in the milk, and then the protein is relatively low, and then that sort of reverses as soon as the cows go out on grass. So the fat tends to come down to under sort of 4%. I don't want to get too technical. And then the protein tends to go up as well. And that's very good for Stilton making because we don't want a milk that's too high in fat. Actually quite low in fat, which is most of the time against what most people would think when they're making cheese. You would think you need a good high fat milk, but for Stilton, we want a nice milk that's not too high in fat. So that's quite crucial.
Nice. And walk us like specifically through like the maturation part of your cheese. Sort of for post make kind of thing. What happens?
Yeah. So we tend to work on the basis that a good Stilton is roughly 3 months, 12 weeks old, which is probably a bit younger than the majority of the general public might think. Most people would think Stilton could be a year old. That's when I talk to people just generally. And so Stilton is actually quite a young cheese. And so we add the blue mold into the milk and we stir it in. So the blue mold is already in the cheese. So all the competitors who've got Stilton now, the mold is already in the center of the cheese. They just need to encourage it to grow. And that's the difficulty, I suppose. So when the cheese get to 4, 5, 6 weeks, we pierce them, and that produces oxygen and air into the cheese, and that in turn encourages the blue mold to grow. It sort of comes alive, so because it can get access to oxygen, just like you and me, we need oxygen to grow.
Yeah.
And survive. The blue mold is the same, so it needs that air, and as soon as it gets that, it starts to grow, and it tends to start growing from the core or the center of the cheese, out to the crust in a sort of veining or marbling fashion, which gives the cheese sort of symbolic look of like a veining blue all the way through the cheese, which is visually is very appealing.
Really striking. And like the you said there, you pierce your cheeses between 4 to 6 weeks. What's the kind of idea, like who makes that decision? We're going to pierce 4, 5, 6, like.
Yeah, it can be, well, it can be down to the time of the year.
Yeah.
And also how soft or dry the cheese are. So we need to sometimes you can start piercing cheese and they're not ready. You can tell that, and they're too soft, and they can actually break apart. Okay. So the cheese need to be robust enough to accept the needles.
Yeah.
So it does actually depend on the time of year, and also it does depend on your stocks of cheese as well. Because if you've got high stocks, then you probably leave the cheese maybe another week before you pierce them. Because as soon as you start piercing them, then you essentially start that maturing process. Because Stilton, by its very nature, is a mold ripened cheese. So as soon as that blue mold starts to grow, basically the clock starts ticking on the maturation of the cheese. And then you've got to assess then, as the mold grows through the cheese, you don't have to assess when the right time to sell and eat the cheese is, as the flavors and the mold breaks down the curd into from like a grainy texture into that nice soft buttery texture that you get.
And Roman, what do you think, like the biggest challenges of affinages that our competitors would face? Would it be the spiking, or? So clearly, one of the things you've really got to be doing is to encourage the blue mold to grow. So that's sacrosanct, because the cheese is mold ripened, so you've got to get some blue mold growing in it. So that is probably the most important thing, and that's not easy because you've got to have the right conditions for the blue mold to grow. You've got to have the right humidity, and the cheeses and the blue mold. You've got to encourage that blue mold to grow. So that is quite difficult. The other thing you've got to think about is the texture of the curd and of the cheese. So you don't want the cheese to dry out too much. On the other hand, you also don't want the cheese to be too wet or too full of moisture. So the wetter the cheese, the more difficulty you'll have in growing the blue mold, because blue mold doesn't like to grow in a really sort of soft, wet cheese. It doesn't like that extra acidity, doesn't like it at all. It can tolerate most things like salt and all that sort of stuff, but it doesn't like high moisture cheese. So it is it's a balance. Stilton is not a hard cheese, it's not a soft cheese, it's somewhere in the middle, and that's why it's quite difficult to get it right. So it's hard to get right. So our competitors, really focusing on, consistent humidity, consistent temperature, and good spiking at the right time,
Yeah, and certainly enough holes into the cheese, so enough piercing needles. And sometimes you can underestimate that because you think, God, I pierced it loads, but actually you really do need to pierce the cheese quite a lot. And as I say, twice in 2 different goes to make sure that you've got enough air getting inside that cheese. And you need to be looking at it as well. So you need to iron it. You need to have a look at the curd, see if there is any blue mold developing, and then you can assess how your cheese is maturing. But you really need to look after it. It's not easy, as I know you found out last year.
I think Justin was our winner, number 2 Pound Street last year, with a really Justin did it, and he, yeah, I think they elicit some help with Stilton. I think Joe Snyder helped them out, but Justin would tell us all about that actually.
Yeah.
He's probably the best person. He looks a little bit like me, but I've got a better beard. But we'll argue about that later. But thanks for that, Robin.
We haven't seen any of the competitors just run off to do some more piercing during the whole interview. It's like, oh my God, more holes.
Well,
maybe a bit too late.
I don't want to give too much away. But, yeah, it's certainly something to think about, definitely.
Fantastic.
Cool. Awesome, thanks for that, Robin. And yeah, I look forward to seeing your cheeses and what everyone does with them. So I look forward to seeing you there.
It'll be great fun.
Perfect.
Thanks, Robin.
And now we're cross over to Jonny. A crossover, it sounds like a news thing.
Where's our lovely Jonny? Here he is. All right,
hello, Perry.
I'm going to give you a spotlight. There you go.
Oh,
there you go.
Look, he's a god. He's got a halo around him.
He is a bit of a cheese god, isn't he? And it's just yeah, like perfectly like shining through the window. So yeah, it's a good light actually. So well done, good lighting. Jonny, tell everyone about you and the history of Baron Bigod and what you guys have done over.
Okay, so I'm Jonny Crickmore, part of the Crickmore family. We've got a dairy farm in Suffolk, on the border of Suffolk and Norfolk. I'm third generation dairy farmer, and me and my wife Dulcie came up with the idea off the back of selling raw milk. Started selling raw milk about 12 years ago now in the little garden shed beside our farm, and we were amazed how many people love coming down to buy the milk, and it just got us thinking, like, what else could we do with that milk, and is there other things what we could use our herd of cows' milk and make, and that kind of sent us on this interesting journey visiting cheesemakers. But we thought cheese is the obvious way to go here, because there really didn't appear to be many people making cheese in East Anglia. And as we sort of visited people, we fell in love with the cheese industry, because the specialist cheese industry, because there's such amazing lovely people out there, and it was just everyone was very kind and welcoming. And we loved what we saw. We thought we could do something like that on our farm. And that's gradually we sort of discovered that the way we needed to go about this was to make this brie style cheese very similar to the French Brie de Meaux, because there really wasn't anybody doing that cheese in the UK. And we were buying all of this French Brie de Meaux into the UK. And the question is, why can't we make this stuff ourselves? Yeah. So we went to the extent of buying a herd of French cows and getting a French cheesemaker to help us design our cheesemaking building and the recipe which we started out on, and then that's kind of over the last 10 years we've been making Baron Bigod, named after this character who was a nobleman of William the Conqueror in 1066, Baron Bigod. He built this big castle which overlooks our marshes and our farm in Bungay, and that's where the name come from. So it's still very French, the whole thing. But and yeah, so we've been making this cheese now for just over 10 years, 11th year now. It's a bugger to make. It's taken a lot of years to get right.
Yeah, it's like everyone absolutely loves it, and I always remember always people talking about Bigod, or like what the name differential, and it's like such a thing that people kind of work out, is it Bigod or Bigod or whatever, but 100% it's Bigod. Yeah, and so how different, because obviously you started a Frenchman helped you out with the Brie de Meaux kind of building. How different is your make, your maturation today from back then? Has it changed? Has it had to change to adapt to the UK climate and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, yes, definitely. We've changed. I think in the early days, we were so caught up on pH numbers, and I used to focus so much on pH and at the certain points when it was important to put rennet in or cut the curd.
Yeah,
as time has gone by, we've changed our recipe, to make the cheese. We just noticed tweaks, and when tweaks we made and improvements happened, that it led us to the recipe what we have now. I think, let me try to think, that one of the things I overlooked in the early days was temperature. And temperature is so important. Like I said, I focused on pH too much, and temperature, getting the temperature getting the right temperature at the right point of the the recipe is crucial. And also the temperature you will need to vary during the year depending on your fat and protein ratio. So the temperature outside affects the temperature what you need to put your milk in at, and the fat, lower fat generally means we will have a faster drainage in the curd. So therefore we need to reduce our temperature down a little bit to hold a little bit of that more moisture in. So just all small tweaks.
Yeah, and walk us through that, your maturation process. So they're sorted and they're ready to go into their rooms. What happens from there, temperature wise and things like that?
Yeah, so the cheese is coming out of the make room on the second day. We take the hoops off, the molds off the cheeses, and we hand salt a little bit around the edges, and then we take a sample of the cheese. We test it for moisture content and the weight of the cheese, and we use those numbers to work out the percentage of salt we put on the top. And then 2 hours later, we put on the bottom. So we flip the cheese over. At that point, the cheese is left in a room, a maturing room or a hastener room, as we call it, for 3 days. And this just allows that last little bit of moisture to leave the cheese. So the cheese is typically about 16 to 17 degrees in that first 3 days. You don't really see much mold at this point. You may see a teeny bit, but then the next day we put it into our maturing caves, and they're more like about 11 to 12 degrees. And that's where they live for a few weeks, and we turn them every 2 days, and the mold starts to become, eventually it covers the whole cheese.
A nice like white bloom kind of thing,
we're looking for Geotrichum and Penicillium candidum, and getting that balance of Geo to PC is incredibly difficult. So anyone who makes a brie and use both Geo PC will know how difficult it is to get the balance of the two just right. What you're trying to do is get a fine coating of Geotrichum growing with a bit of Penicillium what grows through it and grows with it, rather than having big solid lumps of Penicillium candidum growing, because the flavors and the cheeses, I'm sure Robin would say, and Roger probably will say the same. When you look at a cheese what it's going to taste like. So you can tell by the way the rind looks. It's over salted. It's too dry, and you haven't even tried it, and it's just because what certain molds grow at certain places.
And when you see that vermiculated kind of like rind, the brain, you kind of like know you're onto something good. And if you've got that sort of slightly brown breakdown towards the end of its life, you're just going to get some real big, like pungent kind of flavors.
More flavor, but the cheese becomes riskier, and this is what we always like to. We call it living on the edge of danger. So if the cheese is at its best, if you can just hover on the edge of the cliff between a cheese which is exceptionally great in flavor to a cheese which goes over the cliff and becomes a mess.
And it's funny how many people gravitate towards that cascading kind of brie style that just goes everywhere, but impossible to handle wholesale or anything like that.
Cheesemonger's worst nightmare, but a customer that you can get it into a piece of paper for them, they love it.
Put a pot aside to kind of like fill it up. So Jonny, like, what's the biggest challenges you face maturing your cheese? What you think our competitors are going to face maturing cheese? Are you looking mostly forward to innovation, or or what comes out?
I Well, one of the things what I would say to anybody is just be very careful on the humidity of where you're maturing your cheese. So humidity, if you're not getting your humidity right, you'll kill the cheese because it's quite a thin cheese. So it will dry out. And sort of early signs is if you look around the rim, the edge of the rind, right on the sort of the bit where it goes down to the right angly bit. If that little bit is starting to dry there, that's an early sign that your room is too dry. So just be careful of that because you won't get your molds to grow right. But what I would say is I would love to see our cheese being made in a different way, because the trouble with being a cheesemaker, you have to try and be consistent and do the same thing always forever. Whereas what would be great, because we don't need to worry about that with what we're doing here, it would be fantastic to see some different ideas, different temperatures, different experiments with the cheese, and see how different that cheese is to the original.
Because I last year I won with your cheese, which was great. And but the interesting thing you were saying about that drying corner, that kind of like the sharp edges, and I distinctly got that on mine. So essentially the idea was to use it, to make a Caerphilly style out of your great milk, but to get that rapid drying in such a small amount of time, it's the same as the first year with the cheddar. We only had 12 months to mature, so I had to lift the temperature up outside those usual fields so we could try and get like a 14 to 15 month profile in 12. It was trying to take that Caerphilly style with, I think, like seven weeks or whatever it was. So I used the Vacherin Mont d'Or binding on the outside, soaked that to death so I could get aggressive drying going on, and also inject some humidity that was there directly into the middle. Luckily, everyone liked it. So, but it looks distinctly different.
It does taste a beautiful curd. When we've got it wrong and the years gone by and it's tasted like Philly, it does have a lovely flavour to it. So I remember tapping it on the side, and it was kind of rock solid at that point. I thought, oh, this is going to be terrible, and I haven't pulled it off. And when I cut into it, just the aroma that came out was just like fresh pastures. It was just incredible, and I was like, yes, we kind of nailed it. That was so I was really happy with it.
It's probably a good point, actually, to mention, Perry, about the statement of intents this year.
Oh, yeah. So everyone, so obviously the Affineur of the year kind of evolves every year in terms of what they're doing and what criteria there are. But everyone this year, so the first year, I think I may have been the only one who provided paperwork, charts of everything that I did. And that became a regular thing the year after. And this year, everyone up front has to state their intention of what they're going to make. So I always kind of said that if you're going to be in this competition for a whole year, you might as well learn something. So you might as well put your idea on paper, day dot, because there's a lot of time and energy to dedicate to, a singular cheese, which admittedly, is not going to make your business any money specifically at that point. It's a lot of time, effort, and energy in a tough climate. So it's really good to see those statement of intent where someone says, I'm planning to do this, and see how they delivered it so they could learn. So that's going to be really interesting to see that versus that. And, maturing cheese is extremely hard. It doesn't work, 9 times out of 10. So it's a difficult one to state that intent and then see what the finished product is. But it's all learning.
It's a good new angle to this year's competition, isn't it? So I think it gives an extra challenge to everyone.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thanks so much for that, Jonny. Really appreciate it.
No worries.
Yeah, thanks. Stay around. We're going to have lots of questions, I think, anyway. Where are you going next, Perry? Tell me, please.
I'm going to Justin. Yeah, Justin. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Jonny. I'm going to get Justin up.
Yeah, so Justin is from number 2 Pound Street. As I said, won the blue category last year, Affineur of the year. As I mentioned, I have a slightly better beard than him. Vote in the comments. But Justin, tell us about yourself.
Vote in the comments. Vote on the beard in the comments. Did you see him slip that in there?
I know. I think Justin might win this one. I've been too.
I don't know.
I'm gonna have to find out the Zoom way of putting that up.
Yeah. Justin, go ahead.
I'm Justin. I've been working at number 2 Pound Street in Wendover for coming up 3 years now. Kind of always been in the restaurant trade, opening pubs, doing fine dining restaurants, but always had that passion for cheese. And without going job hunting, a cheesemonger role came up in Wendover, and it was just kind of flashing at me, going, "Go for it, do it. This is what you're about." So yeah, applied, took the job, fell in love with it. Within the first week, I got told that, right, I'm doing Academy of Cheese level 1, done. And then, right, 2 weeks later, you're going on level 2. Oh, right, great. And it just drives that passion, which is amazing. So now it's on to level 3, working hard, which is exciting. And it just drives us as a business. So when I first started, our maturing room just opened, where James entered.
And you opened that, was it like 2 years ago? You opened that roughly 3 years ago?
So a week before Affineur of the Year, it was when the maturing room started. So we went and saw Angela and Selena Cairns up in Scotland. So to get the biome going, we got a load of their used whey and chucked it on the ground of the cave to get something going. Which, I think it's trying to kind of find that Wendover terroir, something that we can kind of staple as ours. So when we do take these cheeses, we've got a little bit of that Wendovian DNA in our cheeses, which is amazing.
That's a pretty cool idea. I've heard quite a few people do that. I think Kirkham's had the same kind of scenario where he wished on a room that he moved in that you put loads of whey down to kickstart the kind of the biome in his new rooms. Yeah, and you've entered both categories, right, Justin? You're doing what were you doing this year? Oh, okay, a lot.
It is a lot, but concentrating on these two. We're doing Baron Bigod and Cropwell. So starting off with Cropwell, with Foxy Blue that we entered last year. We like the statement intent. That was I think is a really good thing for us. That's allowed us to use all our records of what we've done last year, improve on where we went wrong. With the final of the cheese that we had last year, we noticed a lot of drying and cracking. So that obviously needs a little bit more humidity to stabilize that. So our main focus was more on the rind and the kind of crust of the cheese, getting that intact, less cracking.
So this year, like corrective action.
Correct.
On the blue.
Yeah,
that's
definitely.
Cool.
So with our aging room, it is a small room, and aging 4 different cheeses differently obviously causes complications. So with the blue, we've managed to create a unit, and I've wrapped it in a tablecloth, which we change on a regular basis, and we spray it with mineral water on the inside. So it's creating that humidity on the inside around the blue on its own singular version, which is, it's blooming really, really nicely.
So it's like a rind within a rind kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. So it's wrapped around the cloth. In terms of piercing, we pierced the exact same number as what we did last year. So we waited till 5 weeks, 9 down, 16 around. And then we did week 6 again, opposite direction. So just gently piercing up the cheese, 9 down, 16 around, turning it over, and then going up again. So you end up with that cross action going through.
And all by hand, all by hand.
All by hand, without using the Welbeck Estate shank that we was gifted last year. We're still using the same piercing rod that we are doing. So we want to kind of try and make it look mechanical and get it as even as possible going all the way around.
And fantastic. And like so quickly run us through the Baron. We don't want to
with the Baron, we've got those in, so rather than aging on our natural slates that we've got or wooden boards, we just got cooling racks, so it allows circulation from underneath and top, and that constant flow. And they're actually stackers as well, so they can stack on top of each other to create
Nice.
that kind of biome going through.
Yeah, got you.
So
What's the biggest challenges you've had so far with both of the cheeses?
Humidity. It's just
Humidity. Yeah.
it's a pain, and where the room is segregated, for some reason the weather outside,
Yeah.
the temperature just has a massive effect. So it's just taking control of that.
I always found that so fascinating when I first started Affinage, that you thought you had this contained room that essentially, you know, you put water in, humidity would go up, X, Y, Z. But I always found it really fascinating what was going on outside the rooms. The pressure specifically would cause some really weird kind of readings that would come through. So yeah, that's a tough one, mate. But yeah, I wish you good luck for this year.
Thank you very much. Yeah. So with the Baron Bigods, we've actually managed to get that amazing bloom,
Nice.
and we've now wrapped them just to contain it, and we've moved them into a colder fridge now just to slow it down.
Cool.
So we can see that amazing rind action of the Geo and the Candida happening. So yeah, exciting times.
Fantastic, mate. Appreciate it. Look forward to seeing you there. Yeah.
Thank you, and you.
Yeah. Well done,
Thanks, buddy.
Justin. Thank
Thanks,
you for joining.
And and then we're going to switch over to Jazz, if that's okay. From they are the oldest cheesemonger in Britain, aren't they?
Just
Well, Jazz can probably
factually,
answer that
just
for
by
you.
probably by a few hundred years. Yeah.
By a few hundred years.
226 years in business.
Okay, 226 years.
Yeah.
That's quite remarkable.
Surprisingly,
You
I
look
haven't
so
been
young.
Tell everyone about yourself and what you do.
Yeah, so I'm Jazz. I'm the quality manager at Paxton Whitfield. So 9 years ago, I started at Paxton's on the cheese counter, just kind of walked past the shop after finishing uni and thought, I like cheese, let's see what happens. And kind of got, more and more obsessed as the years went by. So today I'm based in our kind of Cotswolds maturing room. So we've got 5 maturation rooms, different temperatures and different humidities in each room, and kind of different styles of cheeses in each, which again, we built all the rooms to be changeable. So different fans in each rooms, different, kind of techniques of controlling those rooms.
Yeah, and they're like newly built. They're like
a couple of years old.
Couple of years. Nice.
Yeah, we've done 2 Christmases, which is kind of how we make time in the cheese world, I guess. But 2 Christmases in these new cheese rooms. So still new, but getting kind of used to them. Yeah,
and you've matured a cheese recently, which is coated in coffee, right?
Yes.
I haven't tried it yet, but it sounds like really innovative. How did you come up with that idea, like coating it in coffee?
We wanted to do something kind of, I don't know, like flavors together.
Yeah.
And interesting is we all drink a lot of coffee in the office and we all eat a lot of cheese. And it's like, let's
got
see
loads of leftover coffee, so you
let's
might
see
as
what
well.
happens. So we've got a connection with a local coffee roaster in Cirencester.
Nice.
So James went and drank a bunch of coffee, they ate a bunch of cheese, and they then came to me and said, okay, go make something. So we came up with the idea, and I think it's pretty delicious. So
nice. I have to grab a bit next time I'm walking past a shop. So tell us about your cheese currently, your ideas.
So we're doing all 4 cheeses as well. So quite a bit of work doing all 4, it turns out. So with the Stilton, I'm currently deciding whether I'm going to veer away from my statement of intent or not. I'm kind of at a pinnacle moment.
Okay.
But for the moment, I've kind of matured it quite traditionally. So I paced at 5, and I paced at 6.
Okay.
And similar to Justin, but I've done 10 around, 18 down. What I learned last year is I paced too late. So last year I went 6 and 8.
Yeah.
And we got bluing in the cheese, and we got a really nice rind, but the cheese was still quite kind of territorially, it was still quite crumbly,
chalky. Yeah.
So what I did, the first thing I did when I received the cheese is I ironed it to kind of get that initial texture on the cheese.
Okay.
Because obviously, part of maturation and affinage is taking every cheese as it is. Not every single Cropwell is the same, not every single Baron is the same. So making sure I knew exactly how this one was going to behave, and kind of taking it from there. So keeping it at
so you ironed on entry when it came in. Nice. So and you got an idea of roughly where that Cropwell profile is. So like Justin, you're doing a similar thing, which is like refining what you did last year.
So kind of trying to get more of that kind of breakdown, that richer kind of creamier texture that I think if I'd have had more time last year, I'd have got to. But I took it maybe I forgot about the deadline and was kind of like,
Yeah.
this is my idea. So yeah, trying to get to that deadline with kind of what I want this time.
Yeah, and you think the critical element was when you pierced.
Yeah, I
So
think I
essentially
pierced
you
too
brought
late.
that forward.
Yeah,
Got ya. Yeah,
pulled it forward, and then it's looking really good at the moment. So kind of snow capped on both ends.
Nice.
Not kind of no drying, no cracking. We've been turning it every other day, keeping it kind of 12 degrees and 95% humidity, so quite warm. Kind of been living with washed rinds again, which I did last year.
Okay, nice.
Which I think created quite a nice rind, so kind of continued that. But
And you saw that kind of crossover from the wash rind cheeses.
yeah, I think it's quite nice. It got like same as last year, it got a really nice orange kind of brown rind, and then the whites came through, and I think it creates quite a nice kind of snow capping, which I think is quite typical of Cropwell cheeses. So yeah, trying to emulate that.
I think a lot of people worry about putting cheeses with other cheeses that are different styles and things like that, but sometimes they can like really lend to one another really well.
Yeah, and I think the exciting part of this competition is you can kind of play, as long as you're sticking within safety and quality management systems, then you can kind of play and do different things. And if it works, then awesome, you've got a new product. And if it doesn't, then
well you learn that's
yeah,
like
exactly.
I love the obviously you and Justin just like improving on that, being okay, finding out like what's going on, and then just like doing it again but just tweaking, and then we're gonna get to like Affineur 2050 and everyone's gonna have like amazing Stiltons
That's
and
still what
Baron
you've ever
Bygone,
seen.
and Robin and Jonny are going to be worrying quite a bit. And the Baron, what are you doing there quickly, John?
So I've gone a bit more rogue on the Baron.
Okay.
So I have coated it in furikake, which is a Japanese kind of rice seasoning, so seaweed, chili, sesame, black and white sesame. So my kind of initial idea came from curing fish in Japanese culture in kombu, so kind of seaweed curing. And I was like, okay, maybe I could wrap the cheese in seaweed, but I was like, step back a bit, Jazz, control yourself. So I kind of stepped back to, if you think about cheeses like fleur de maquis in France, so kind of coated in those herbs. So yeah, going for a furikake kind of coating, and I'm now letting the white mold grow and patting it back. So I'm expecting to kind of see flecks of that.
Just like layering and layering and layering. Yeah.
So keep patting it back, keep patting it back. And I would expect to, kind of see that white mold overtake, keep patting it back, and then you should see flecks of the green and the sesame. But it's
so are you hand patting, or are you driving in with a cloth, or hand patting?
Yeah, all by hand. And they're kind of just on racks at the moment, kind of 10 to 12 degrees and about 80 to 85% humidity.
Nice. Okay. Yeah, that sounds really nice. And
like
experiment.
So
well, you sound like a cheese coating specialist with the coffee, right? So to add the kind of like seaweed kind of kelpie element in it, I've seen that in cheeses a few times, and it's really paid off like really well. And that, I think it's that savory element that comes in so heavy.
I'm hoping that savoriness, the nuttiness from the savory sesame seeds, that kind of umami flavor will work really nicely with those kind of mushroomy notes from the Baron and create some hopefully quite balanced. But we'll find out in a couple of weeks.
Awesome. I'm so interested.
Johnny is smiling. Johnny is smiling, so we're all right.
I've not offended him yet.
Very excited.
Yeah, it sounds great. It sounds like a really great idea to just really take it out to a different area and see, what's going to happen, But so excited to see it, and I look forward to seeing you there.
Yeah, same.
Thanks, Jazz. Appreciate it. And over to the troublesome Roger. So apologies for
our little anarchist.
The anarchist himself. So Roger has he's a legendary cheesemaker who's trying to work out how to turn off mute. He'll be with us in a sec, but he's a legendary cheesemaker from White Lake Cheeses over here. He makes some real fantastic cheeses. And a range. The most busiest cheesemaker we know making in product development. Roger, do you want to take over and tell everyone about what you do?
Yeah, so I am a little bit mad. Everyone says I've got ADHD because I can't just do one thing. So I think we make 35 different cheeses now. We did have a meeting a couple of months ago to say, right, no more new cheeses. And then I think 2 weeks later I said, I've got great new cheese. So yeah, they're not happy with me in the cheese room, but that's just tough. I love what I do. I mean, to me, cheese making is the best job in the world. I think if you go to a party and someone says, what do you do? And you say accountant, they don't want to talk to you. But if you say a cheesemaker, everyone's fascinated fascinated by our world. So I think we're really lucky in that respect. Yeah, we primarily make goat's cheese, and I've always been a big fan of Baron Bigod. I wanted to get into Affineur last year, but we couldn't find the time. So I thought, right, let's get on and do it this year. Really excited, and interesting what Jonny was saying earlier about the rind drying out. That's definitely something we've seen on it. The cheese we've had, because it matures differently from our brie style cheese. It's much thinner.
So Roger, are you doing on the Baron Bigod? Are you doing a straight sort of brie mature kind of focused?
No, so
okay.
Obviously, all our cheeses have names. One of our favourite cheeses is Eve, which is a little goat brie wrapped in a vine leaf. So we're turning Baron Bigod into Adam.
Okay.
So it's a brie, and it's going to be washed inside a brandy and wrapped in lots of vine leaves.
Wow. Okay.
So we'll see what that does, because we find with Eve, the leaves give it a beautiful sweetness. So it'll be fascinating to see what it does with the Baron. I think my biggest concern is, and I think Jonny talked about it earlier as well, is making sure it doesn't dry out too fast. Because obviously we're doing it in the rooms with mature or other cheeses, and unfortunately, even though I love Baron Bigod, I'm not messing up my other cheeses to get the Baron right. So we'll live and we'll learn. But I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens. And I love to win, so I am quite competitive. You may have noticed that over the years.
Yeah,
I won't be nobbling other people's cheeses, but I will be looking to win.
Yeah, we'll see you walking around just putting, sort of. And the interesting thing is, well, you've obviously, one of your cheeses, Solstice, is actually in the competition.
Yeah, that's going to be fascinating. We make Solstice our way, and we, wash rind cheeses. There's two. Affineur is a massive part of wash rind cheese. Getting that right, it's not easy. It's taken us years to get it right, and we are still developing what we do. And I think someone else, alluded earlier about the time of the year has a massive effect on the cheese as well. And so every year we think, oh God, it's spring. I wonder why everything's changed, because you're in a cheese room, you don't see the daylight very often. So you kind of forget what time of year it is sometimes. And this year has just been barking mad. The humidity has been all over the place this year. Just with the rainfall and the sun, and because it's high humidity, chillers run more or less depending on what you're doing, so you get colder or warmer. There's a lot of variables. So I think Affineuring needs to be shouted out about a lot more. And this is what excites me so much about this competition. It's getting, we've got a lot of really good cheesemakers in this country, but we don't really talk about Affineuring enough. And to me, particularly for cheesemongers, it gives them a real point of difference between themselves and other cheesemakers. So I'm really excited to see, the cheesemongering world piling into this. It grows every year, doesn't it? And I think the first litmus test, like the first year of that many, I can't remember, was it like 11 cheeses, all from the same place but matured in all different styles, fairly like similar, like everyone pretty much tried to mature a really good cheddar. But the variation was incredible. So you've got things, made at precisely the same time, delivered roughly precisely the time, and then you've got these, nuances of difference. And I think it's just so fascinating what environments and what people can do to cheeses to make a difference. And I think it's just a really big growing area. What I'd personally like to see, I'd like to see more cheesemongers getting involved in this and not worrying about having a proper maturing room. I mean, you've built one, and obviously various other people have got maturing rooms, but actually, to my mind, you're better off learning in a fridge, making mistakes on a small scale, and understand temperature and humidity before you build a stonking great store and learn on an expensive scale. So more cheesemongers do need to take the brave leap and have a go at it.
Definitely. I think there was, we kind of went to the official, we went, Mons, Affinage, like we went to kind of the
best course
I think,
ever.
yeah, a lot of fun, a lot of cheese, a lot of work actually, which they didn't really tell you about, but free labor, I think it was, but incredible course. But it feels like such a high bar to get into, and it's not. You can do corrective action, and it won't be perfect, but we were looking at how much we would need to spend, which we just didn't have the money. But we kind of went on, bolted on, added an extra thing, and if the humidity wasn't enough, we compensated. And it's just about giving it a go on whatever scale it is will really drive it forward, I think, Roger.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
and I think too many people worry about failure, and my view is if I'm not failing, I'm not trying hard enough. And that's not. I'm not planning to fail this time, but
that's a lot coming from someone who is very competitive.
But you don't see all the failures. The failures don't make it to market.
Get him off, Perry. Get him off. Get him off.
Thanks, Roger. Appreciate it. See you soon, mate. Yeah. And next we have Claire, another cheesemaker come competitor this year. So Claire, whenever you're ready, tell us about what you do and everything.
Okay, so I started Bert's Cheese back in 2009, so 15 years ago. And we make a sort of a small mold ripened blue as a little baby truckle, and we make a slightly larger cheese, about 1 kilo. So the biggest difference for us, I suppose, is the size of the cheeses, going from our little cheeses to a Stilton. But Tracy mentioned about entering Affineur of the Year, and I thought, okay, we'll give it a go.
You specifically said, obviously, you're making like sort of 200 gram, are they?
Yeah, so they're about 180.
180, give or take. And then you do 1 kilo, and then to 8 kilo.
So for us, I suppose that was I mean, the way we mature our cheeses, the heights of the racks, and even down to the little piercer. We have like a little handheld piercer, so it's all done by hand. But we have sort of like quite a short piercer. So just listening there, just thinking, oh crikey, I wonder if we've got enough piercing going on.
When you obviously go up to that size, I suppose that's just all these things you don't consider until you pop it in
to do it. So we did sort of we used sort of 2 different piercers. We did our little sort of 4-pronged kind of in through the sides, and then we actually, maybe we've hopefully we're not doing the wrong thing, but we actually went in through the top as well.
Okay.
Because we do both with our cheeses. So the idea when we came to the statement of sort of intent was to maybe sort of do what we do with our cheeses with the Stilton. So we've gone side and top, which
I think Hebridean Blue do a side and top, and they have a real coarse covering, kind of almost like marble, kind of like very consistent from top to bottom.
So we'll see. I think that was one of the biggest challenges for us, I suppose, is one of the things I learned a lot about when we started making blue was, again, sort of when we pierced them and how we pierced them and how many pierces, and so it's going to be interesting to see how much blue. But then one of the other things we were go on, sorry.
How so apart from piercing, how humidity, turning, what's that looking like for you at the moment?
So we were a little bit worried. So we had a play around over the years, probably about 4 years ago. We made a bit of a Cheshire cheese, and we were sort of having a play with that. And one of the things we were aware of is things how when they dry out and the cracking. So we don't really see that so much on our cheeses because they're sort of mold ripened, and we keep the humidity quite high, obviously for the blue and to encourage the blue. But we were just a bit nervous about how the Stilton might dry out given the size. So we actually do another process where we wrap some of our cheeses. We do a little bit of a rind wash. We use a Watkins cider. And then we do one where we actually cover them in vine leaves. Again, it sort of just helps protect the outside. So we've kind of taken not only the blue, the piercing, a little bit of a rind wash, and then we've wrapped it in vine leaves just to stop it cracking and drying out. So we did that about 3 weeks ago.
And are you seeing any like distinctive Bert blue molds developing on the outside yet, or any beginnings?
Not so much. I think that was because we had it in the store with the blue. I'm hoping that just in that sort of environment, we will have encouraged that bluing through the cheese. But then by sort of putting the vine leaves on to stop it cracking, whether we'll see much of that sort of crossover, we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah. So the cracking has probably been the biggest challenge that you've had so far, or is it all just quite a maybe even the sizes,
I think that was it. When initially it's like, crikey, it's big cheese. And then so whether our piercers will sort of get deep enough, but then also I suppose just making sure we get that humidity and then sort of stop it from drying out. So we've kind of tried to cover all bases.
Well,
I'm sorry making you enter.
Just blame it on Tracy. She's
getting great opportunity to enter. I was really I'm excited about it, but it's just it's just something really different for us.
Definitely.
And you were saying you don't know if you've done something wrong, but nothing is wrong in this competition. That's the great thing.
And I like listening to Roger there. You were saying, if you're going to make a few failures, aren't you? You're going to, and everyone seemingly from last year is probably trying to do something a little bit different based on what they did last year. So it's all just a learning, isn't it?
I'm totally intrigued in terms of that sort of development. I did this year. I'm going to do roughly the same again and improve on it. And I think that's like what Affineur of the Year is all about, like trying to continuously up your affinage kind of like skills. And if you learn a little bit about the Cropwell and how to mature it in your rooms, then maybe even put a little bit of those ideas into Bert or something like that. It's all learning.
Brilliant.
Awesome.
Right,
Thanks,
we better
Claire.
move on to Daria now, because thank you, Claire, so much. We're sort of running towards the top of we don't run out of time, but it's
getting
it's
close.
how much time we need for questions and things. So
so we've got Daria from Neil's Yard. Hey, you all right?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
You're welcome.
I am coming up on 3 years with Neil's Yard. I actually started on our packing team and was on the packing team for about a year, and now I'm part of our e-commerce team. So I'm competing this year with a few of my colleagues on our e-commerce team. But we have had colleagues from Neil's Yard participate in the past, but this is my team's first year, so we've gleaned as much as we can from our colleagues, but we're excited.
Is there like a little bit of an internals Neil's Yard competition to?
Oh yeah. Yes. I mean, one of the things that's been really interesting for us, so our e-com team, we're based in Southeast London in our offices and our sort of larger maturing space underneath the railway arches. But our colleagues have competed in the past from our retail location. So it's really interesting for us to be able to see the kind of microclimates that we can create with within our own business in these sort of various spaces throughout the company.
So just creating those small and I believe you have some pictures of your cheese. Is that?
I do, but now I'm quite self-conscious. Maybe I'll just leave it a surprise, and on June 12th all will be revealed.
Maybe do, but tell us about what you're doing with your cheeses.
Yes, so our approach has I would say pretty conventional. It's conventionally structured, I should say, not particularly wild. We have pierced at 5 weeks and 6 weeks, so similar to the other competitors. Pierced 8 down, 16 around. One of the sort of tips from our colleagues that competed last year was that question of humidity and trying to maintain moisture in the cheese, which we've found so far to be our biggest challenge. So actually right now we've got our cheese in one of our rooms with the highest humidity. It's actually where we keep generally some of our soft cheeses, wash rind cheeses, but we're just trying to maintain the moisture within the cheese at the moment.
And has that cheese always lived there, did you say, or did you decide to move it over to higher humidity?
We initially had it in a space that was a bit drier, but at a higher temperature, and but you know, through observation have decided to alter our plan a little bit just to help it be its best.
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting when you kind of make that corrective action, what can happen on the rinds and things like that. And it took to its new home quite well, right?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
So fingers crossed that it stays that way.
Yeah. And like obviously you guys are probably the biggest Affineur in the UK. How do you kind of convey that to your customers, and why is affinage so important to Neal's Yard?
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, it is such an art form, and I think that's one of the reasons this competition is so terrific. And you know, I certainly am one of the less formally experienced members of the team in terms of affinage. So it's just you know, being part of this competition, it's just an exciting way to kind of celebrate that field of specialty.
Yeah, and it's like you said, it's a great opportunity to learn at the beginning and kind of like work everything out, and even that corrective action, moving it from one room to another, like looking at that rind and what it was doing, as you were saying, it looked like it was beginning to crack. You know, those they're like imprints and memories of what you would do next time, and they just like layer and layer and layer. So you know, but I'm really interested to see your cheese and taste it and see
Terrific.
see what happens.
Well, we are really excited for June 12th, so we can't wait.
Yeah, not long.
Did you have a couple of did you want to share some pictures, Daria?
That's okay. I will
keeping them secret.
I'll save it for June 12th.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Fantastic. No, thank you. And we love the camaraderie between all the Neal's Yard Dairy teams entering. So you're out in force this year. It's going to be exciting. Thank you for joining.
Lovely. Thank you very much.
So I'm just going to get everybody up on the screen, and we've got a couple of questions. So we can maybe let me remove your spotlight as well, Perry. So we've got everybody, I think. Yes. So this is a good question, actually, from someone who hasn't put their name in. Watchrick Stein, and he was talking to a continental farmer who made two cheeses with different names, but from the same herd. Name was based on whether it was summer and grass-fed milk or winter and silage-fed. Do we do that in the UK? I can't think of anybody that we do.
I can't recall any at all. So please unmute yourself if anyone does recall.
But I don't think there is anybody that does it in the
UK. No, I don't think there is.
Which is interesting. Maybe that's an opportunity for one of you cheesemakers.
I mean, you'd have to have a pretty heavy sway to call them completely two different things. And I don't think I've seen, you know, I would say the seasonal change in the UK is more nuanced than on the continental kind of platform, I suppose. That's just my view. I don't know if any of the cheesemakers, Jonny, Robin, or Roger, want to jump in there.
We don't. Obviously, we make one cheese goes all through the year. I mean, it definitely has differences in the seasons of the year. I would say probably hard cheeses in the UK, there's an opportunity. I don't think I agree. It's not being done. But if you had if you're making sort of an Alpine style cheese, making that in the summer months only, that would make sense. But no, I don't think there is anybody at the moment.
Yeah, it would be a bit like Tim Lincolnshire Poacher only making the hard cheeses with the winter milk, and then summer he makes a Vacheron or something, isn't it?
And thinking about it, probably Kingston Dairy, David Jowett with his new Byberry, which is kind of from the same herd as Berkwell's, probably has a big opportunity to do something like that. But that's a lot of investment. I suppose that's the other thing as well, storing that cheese for the amount of time, keeping it in the right environment for a prolonged period of time. you know, we
I
need to
think,
get
I
our-
mean, Roger's disappeared, Perry, but I think maybe he does it a little bit with Rachel, doesn't he? He has that extra.
I think that's just longer. I think that's just
another
longer
maturity.
larger form.
Yeah.
Longer maturity, larger format. But I think, yeah, David Kingston Dairy has a real opportunity to probably look at that. But then it's investment, isn't it? So somebody needs to speak to investors who can just, you know, throw a couple of $100,000 into throwing some cheese into a safe. Maybe we should start that up.
Yeah,
The
let's.
cheese fund.
Okay. Anybody listening? Let's do it. Next project for me.
Yeah.
Find the money. And then Alison is asking. Alison has joined us tonight, and she is one of our level 3 fellows. Congratulations, Alison.
Well done.
She's saying, where do you guys get your vine leaves from? So I think Roger has gone. Thinks it's early in the year yet, and how do you store them?
Yeah, confess we just we actually buy our vine leaves in. It's not something we do a lot of. We don't make the divine. We used to make the divine, but it's not something we do very often. So this was more of a sort of a process just for the Affineur, just as I say, just for that sort of protective. So we actually just bought them sort of pre-punched from a sort of a food safety point of view as well. So yeah, so it was so that unfortunately it's not something we've picked or acquired or.
No, but I think Roger does the same. So they're like in brine, aren't they? Layers in.
Yeah, they're in the brine. They're from Greece.
Yes, and it's the kind of vine
Greek
leaves that they use for dolmades and things, isn't it?
Yeah, they're already sort of ready and easy to handle for us as well.
Cool. Perfect. That's a slightly simpler question to answer. Thank you, everybody. There's no more other questions. If anybody has, please shout up now. I'd just like to say a massive thank you to everybody for joining, because it's been brilliant and really interesting. And the competition changes, as we've been saying, year on year, and it's just growing even more intriguing. I think it doesn't get less intriguing. So the finals, chaps, 12th of June, be there, please, with your cheeses. We've got our sponsors joining us, so we'll have the wonderful Peter's Yard crackers to pair with all of these cheeses. We'll be running around pairing them on the day, no doubt. We've got the cheesemakers are joining us as well, whose cheeses have been affineured. So Jonny will be there, I'm hoping Jonny's going to be there. I'm giving him the look now. Yes, we've got the thumbs up. Claire's going to be there anyway. Roger will be there for sure. Robin, have we got you on the 12th of June? I'm sure. Brilliant. So do come along. There's tickets available on the website if you want to come along for the day. It's a lot of cheese eating, but really interesting because there's a people's choice as well. So I know some of you have joined us tonight from abroad, so thank you for that. And we do have another one of these webinars for the other 2 cheeses in a couple of weeks' time. Perry, massive thanks for all those wonderful questions and keeping everybody in order. Everybody was very well behaved. Roger's disappeared.
Yeah, Roger was really well behaved.
But he was very well behaved. Let me just quickly, I don't think there's more questions, just no, not more questions. I think we're good. Have you guys very quickly, oh, Rachel's telling me 22nd of May for the next one. Thanks, Rach. Rachel is the most wonderful marketing person we have, who organises me now and everything else. If there's any questions amongst yourselves, shout up. But I think we had a chat before we came into the webinar. If you've got any burning questions for the cheesemakers, I'm sure they're quite happy to take those over email or over the phone. But thank you, everybody, again, once more for joining. And see you all on the 12th of June for real in person. Good evening, all.
Bye.
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 Thank
Bye.
you.
Cheers,
Bye.
guys. See you soon.
Bye.